I'd like to explain this to you, Frederick Plykin. I mean, I just actually randomly read it. I actually spent like a 9.5 minutes for this, just the proper amount of time expected from SAT tests. You know, I could have actually managed to lessen the time if I really take the test underneath the camera after this blowback from Precavery.com. I felt double the pressure on me. But I managed to get I think everything correct, but this was supposed to be departure, not complacency. The answer said it's A. C-A-B-B-B-A-B-D. Oh, does that C? And if you really actually, have a doubt about my honesty, if you really actually feel that I might memorize the answer ahead of time. I already actually spent my previous 2 hours solving questions from Precavery.com, and this was a totally improvised one because I was again very much shaken to the core to have this blowback from Precavery.com because my initial thought was fairly correct, but I couldn't muster up my courage because of the terrifying history with the Precavery.com. I think it's time for me to really leave this effort. I'd rather be questioned or examined in a serious sense, because once I made such a zigzag step, I could never actually express myself thoroughly. I would always be restrained. Oh, what if I would actually make wrong answer again? What if they never accept my answer? And these type of incidents truly hampered my judgment. I can never be myself. I can never be myself. So this question was a fairly tough. The author uses such words as meanly and righteousness in lines 52 to 57 in order to imply what? If you ever actually look into this paragraph, for most men, it appears to me are in a strange uncertainty about it, whether it is the devil of God, and have somewhat hastily concluded that it is the chief of the men here to glorify God and enjoy him forever. Still, they live meanly like ants, though the fable tells us that Aesop's fable, this type of very pithy and instructive story, right, tells us that we were long ago changed into man like pygmies. We fight with the cranes, and it is error upon error and a cloud upon cloud. And our best virtue has for its occasion a superfluous inevitable wretchedness. Our life is frittered away by detail. It means Thoreau. I'm not really so sure this is a real article by Thoreau, but my takeaway was like that Thoreau believed that we were actually our life is wasted because of our constant obsession with earthly gods and the secular ideas. But only a handful of people, only a very small number of people give thought about their belief by seriously meditating upon their value system and the religious institution. They would automatically subscribe to doctrines and dogmas preached by their preachers and ministers or reverends. But here, it is more like the people are somehow indoctrinated to believe the severe way of living. Then this type of ethics would eventually confine us to prison of torture, sapping our intellectual energies away. Drip by drip, we're actually enslaved to this utter miserable Protestant and puritanical philosophy, whipping us to work like an ant or a cow, literally goading us into working diligently. Otherwise, this would be the greatest evil and vice. So many people's lives are harsh and mundane. That's really the idea. For most men, it appears to me, are in a strange uncertainty. This is really the question. What can be inferred about the author's views on religion? He believes too few people critically examine their religious beliefs. That means that they are somehow cultivated to think alike. No one, almost no one, would muster of courage to stand up against the institution deep as our birth or old as a tale. They never even actually have that kind of intellectual courage. Only a handful, even actually less than a handful. And I believe this answer is a departure, resignation. But the answer says it's A. I don't really buy that. It's a complacency. Are you sure? I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately to front only the essential facts of life. I actually decided to put myself to pasture because, this is not really a demotion or relegation. Because I really wanted to live life as fulfilling as possible. This is a very deliberate choice. By actually reducing my life to the essentials. Because that means he just really wants to eliminate all the unnecessary extraneous thingy that might eventually distract him. He would rather bare his chest to live a life to the fullest degree. Removing our earthly goods or throwing away. It's a really Mary Konto's decluttering. It's a really spiritual decluttering. Of course, he would actually throw away many things. If you ever see that an honest man has a hardly need to count more than his 10 fingers, or in extreme cases, he may add his 10 toes and lump the rest. Simplicity. He's been a minimalist. You know what? Let's declutter our houses. Try to actually dump all the unnecessary guts. Leave life as free as possible. By doing so, you can liberate your spirit. If you ever actually say goodbye and bid a farewell to unnecessary materials and possessions, then you can truly set your soul free. That's really the sentiment here. Yeah. And our society willingly focuses on too much on drudgery and insignificant details. I have uploaded the video in case you actually really have a doubt about my honesty, whether I had already actually visited this before. Excuse me. I suspect that this book has been changed again. I've never expected to see this many relevant words that I have previously touched from recovery.com. No, drudgery, and I can smell that this has been touched, right? This has been reeked in recent days, right? Am I getting it correct? But anyway, I was completely unknown to it. I skipped the initial 2 articles to root out the seeds of doubt. I have never consulted with the answer keys. Nope. 이거는 너무나 improvised 된 겁니다. 정말이에요. 근데 이거 보세요. 이런 것도 맞출 수 있었어요. Our society willingly focuses too much on drudgery and insignificant detail. 어디서 나오냐고? Do you really think that, I was picking out answer randomly, or this was a mere coincidence? Let me actually pinpoint the exact point. I want to live life deep and suck out all the marrow of life, to live sturdily, Spartan-like, as to put to rout all that was not life, to cut a broader swath, and shave close, drive a life into a corner, reduce the lowest and whole genuine meanness of it, publish the meanness of to the war, publish its meanness to the war, or if it were sublime, to know it by experience and to be able to give a true account of it in my next excursion. For most men, it appears to be. He literally says that he wants to create a physical ordeal for himself by doing so. Removing unnecessary comfort, he could till his soul. But there is a equilibrium or balance that should be met. He should never he should never let himself carried away by his obsession with the earthly secular life. No, I'm not lying. This is very easy to explain that. And excuse me, do you honestly think that would be much more meaningful than this question? What central claim does the author make about society as a whole? How would you actually read it? Excuse me, do you honestly think that question would have surpassed this, paragraph full of a meaning? I don't understand. You know what? I can actually pinpoint the exact moment. He says that we must learn to reawake and keep ourselves awake by not by the mechanical age, but by an infinite expectation of the dawn. Here, dawn is definitely awakening moment of our spirit, which does not forsake us in our soundest sleep. I know of no more encouraging fact than the unquestionable ability of man to elevate his life by a conscious endeavor. It is something to be able to paint a particular picture or to carve out a statue to make sure few objects are beautiful, but it is a far more glorious to carve and paint the very atmosphere and a medium through which we look, which morally we can do to affect the quality of day. This is the highest of art. To affect the quality of the day, this is the highest of the art. It's true. However, the first paragraph most strongly suggests that he believes that. He believes that most people have yet to realize the fullest potential of life. Why? Because the millions are awakened enough for physical labor, but only 1 in a million is awakened, or 100 millions, only 1 in 100 millions to a poetic divine life. Let me actually go back to the previous question. The central claim here is our society has been beholden to puritanical virtue, asking us to work diligently. That's the greatest virtue, leading us to the pathway to heaven. That's really the sentiment argument underlying in this passage that has never been overtly presented. However, it's very true. But if you only actually enlighten the mind with a question the soundness of this theory, but most of them would it be taught uncritically. This is the definition of indoctrination. They were enslaved spiritually to buy the argument without forging a critical viewpoint. Then this type of blind faith in religion eventually made our mind dull and made our life so meaningless. But this, the reason why it's really a strong, let me explain this. The reason why the D is answer, instead of he believes to affect the quality of life is highest form, even though it was here, right in front of this sentence. It is presented, however, this is really about the suggestion. Affect the quality of the day that is the highest hour. Every man is a test to make his life, even in detail, worthy of the contemplation. But here in detail, he really wants to pursue a life in detail by focusing on spiritual fulfillment or meditation. That would actually give us enough time to look back and think about what we might do, or how we actually bring ourselves forward spiritually, instead of actually being nagged down by materialism or physical indulgence, sensuous satiation or satiety. These type of one-dimensional effect would sometimes consume all our efforts. So we never have a capacity to lift up the quality of our life to next level. That's the problem. We'll give some suggestion here. The reason why that's not really the answer, this is this has been stated. However, this question is the first paragraph of the passage most strongly suggests you need to find what's been implied, not overtly stated. You would actually, guess what from this? What can you infer from this passage? That's really the one. He believes that only a handful of the people are awakened. Why? He believed most people yet to realize the fullest potential. Millions are awakened enough for physical labor. Only 1 in a million is awake enough for effective intellectual exertion. Only 1 in 100 million to a poetic or divine life. To be awakened is to be alive. I have never met yet a man who was quite awake. How could I ever look him in the face? Think about it. If I ever had met that person, how could I have ever mustered up courage to confront that holy being, because of that type of persons as individuals would be so rare, and that person would have been so determined to improve the quality of one's life, then one would probably have no chance to be engaged with others casually. Then that type of holy spirit might not be easily available, right? And the Spartan-like, austere, number 40, and line number 40. I wanted to leave deep and suck out all my marrow of life, to leave sturdily Spartan-like as to put to rout all that was not life, to cut a broader swath and achieve a close, to drive life into a corner and reduce it to its lowest terms. If it proved to be mean, why then to get the whole and genuine meanness of it, publish its meanness, or if it were sublime, to know it by experience, to be able to give a true account of it in my next excursion. That means what? He said he actually really aspired to live such a profound life. He wanted to siphon out the very quintessence of his being. So that type of rigidity, and it's not really rigidity, tell the truth, it's really a rigor and devotion to the degree of ascetic austerity. Yeah. Ascetic austerity. He's really like a non-secular monk, right? The way he leads his life. Because he always yearned for simplicity and austerity. These are really the greatest virtues he would like to believe. Because by literally cutting corners, removing unnecessary parts and lifting them up, and being emancipated from worldly possessions and secular viewpoints, we can honestly confront the very honest version of ourselves. We can actually finally see eye to eye with the soul that has been inherent and intrinsic to our essence. Unless you remove this guile, you would never confront it. Yet there is a sense of dedication to spiritual fulfillment. You would never actually be a lazy couch potato. Nope. Even if you would have downplayed the importance of labor, he would have never say that you can actually be a lazy idiot or idler. No. You would have never twiddle your thumbs to idle away your days. That's not the point. You need to delve into the spiritual refinement, constantly mirroring the status of your soul, then checking upon the necessity of your mind. And that type of dedicated endeavors in cultivating your soul while minimizing the indulgence and earthly lust and desire. That's really the key point here. 이게 너무나 진짜예요. many people's lives are harsh and mundane. That's very important. I think this question is the most important. For most men, it appears to me are in a strange uncertainty about it, whether it is the devil of God, or have someone hastily concluded that it is the chief of a man here to glorify God or enjoy Him forever. Still, we live meanly like ants. We actually spend 20 hours toiling and boiling like ants. These insects are literally the symbol of diligence. That's a puritanical virtue. If you actually let your sit on your hands idly, then this is invitation to a devil, right? If you do not actually plow through the task you need to fulfill, then you're gonna end up inviting the vice that you're going to regret, like gambling or retardation of a mentality, and so on, right? Idle hands would eventually invite the devil. That type of obsession and a desire to possess more than this type of superficial, shallow enlightenment eventually poisoned our soul. It works like a venom to have us completely dedicated to puritanical and austere beliefs that would eventually put us apart from the spiritual fulfillment and satisfaction. Seemingly, at a first glance, at prima facie, this seems like, oh, we would actually finally, think about it. We actually, we are so thankful as we have a food on our table and as our family gather together to say thank you to Lord. Then this seems like literally a picture perfect life. At the end of the day, you've been very thankful. But however, how many minutes have you ever spent throughout the day to think hard about your psychological balance and a spiritual satisfaction? Have you ever had a chance to look into your inner self? Have you ever thought about what it is to be a man? And this type of a civilization, not really this type of civilization. I have to honestly say that people would be too civilized to think about the very nature of unrefined soul. They had no chance to hearken into our primitive soul, yearning for our attention. You would only face it when you let go of possessions and lust and desire and a greed pressing upon your shoulder. Then you can finally have a vis-a-vis moment with the very essence of your existence. Yeah. That's really the reason. It's inevitable wretchedness. You know what? You think that you have yourself cladded with a designer goods. So you think that you're rich. And you think that you're well-to-do. No. Your soul is poverty-stricken. The very destitution of a soul should never be ignored. Because this is really a skin-deep wealth that has been accumulated in return of our internal maturity as a human being. So his philosophy is like that. The more you bear your chest, the more you open up, the more you displace yourself from the refined sophistication of our society, the more you would have a chance to know the very bare naked essence of our soul. The people actually, this is really a temptation. Definitely, people really want to live a comfort and happy life, right? But it's very tough to get rid of. Lurings and temptations. How many of them would overcome these obstacles standing in front of us? Many, he even actually considered these people the public, who had no other choice but to be inculcated and imbued with this mundane worldliness. That's just one way of living. But it takes life to break out of the mold. By doing so, we can have a fresh perspective that would that would let us appreciate the value of our self. Our existence, ourselves can never be assessed humbly. When our bodies are cladded and attired with a sweat of greed, then that's not right. You have to be withdrawn from this culture of consumerism. So cleaning out your closet so that you're left with one of the most essential items of clothing. Think about it. Keep your accounts on the thumbnail. Just actually minimize your properties and the possessions to its minimum. Right? In the midst of this chopping sea of civilized life, such are clouds and storms and quicksands and 1,001 items to be allowed for that a man has to leave. Literally, you have to actually leave your life to nature. Because instead of being surrounded by conveniences that would fool you or lull you into a false sense of security, as if you've been actually completely satisfied with your way of living, this type of complacency might benumb your soul, but you have to awaken it. This type of anesthesia is a poison to our soul. Break out of it. Hello. The less we possess, the more we can make our life fulfilling and meaningful. Why can't you be a mendicant who would actually get rid of all the possessions? When you return to the empty-handed, then you would have the word. That's really the policy, the minimalism. Right? Think about it. You just actually hit the sack. All you need is a cloud and a storms and quicksands and 1,001 items to be allowed for. That a man has to leave. The life would go on without actually having too much. If you don't actually have a place to put down your head, why don't you actually, have the nature as your bed? Right? If he would not found her, go to the bottom and not make his poor at all by dead reckoning. He must be a great calculator indeed who succeeds simply simplify. Instead of 3 meals a day, if it were necessary, eat but one. Instead of 100 dishes, 5. Reduce other things in proportion. This is really him. He must be a great calculator. He would not found her go to the bottom and not make his support at all by dead reckoning. It means you think that, pinching pennies and keeping your account book full. These type of reckonings are counterproductive. It sounds really counterintuitive. The more you have, eventually you would feel secure. Because you need to put aside a certain amount of money for rainy days, for sure. However, this type of a sense of security would eventually bore our soul into a falsified complacency. We might be so desensitized to feel the very yearning coming from the deepest of our heart, that human urgency to kindle up the torch of awakening. That's what's missing. Let me actually check the answer once more. CAD. 내가 진짜 맞는 거 같다. CADB BBA DD CC. 이거 나도 설명 한 번만 볼게요. And it's a first graph. 여기 first graph거든. 그래서 여기에다가 여기까지밖에 해당이 안 되긴 하네. Yeah, this is really about the first paragraph. 여기까지. 이거 좀 어렵다잖아. 이거 봐. 하드야. 4번. 이거 좀 어렵지 않았나요? 이거 쉬웠나? 쉬웠다. 아, 그래? 어쨌든 저 정말이에요. 저는 이거 할 수 있어요. 근데 이게 진짜인지 모르겠어요. 답이 진짜인가요? 저희는 확실히 안다고 보려고. 근데 글은 어디서? 왜냐면 글이 좀 바뀐 것 같아. 본 적이 없지만은 글이 바뀌었다는 걸 알 수 있는 게 vocabulary.com에서 요번에 본 단어가 너무 많이 나와. 그래서 그린 거예요. 제가 뭐 이 글을 본 게 아니고 vocabulary.com에서 요번에 본 글이 너무 많이 나와요. But let me explain this. We must learn. You know what? I kind of in the sense that this article has been updated because I noticed that there were too many words that were actually mentioned from vocabulary.com. I mean, it's really difficult for me to ignore. There were too many of them. I've been actually constantly frequenting them. And if you really want me to explain, we must learn to reawaken, keep ourselves awake, not by the mechanical age, but by an infinite expectation of dawn, which does not forsake us in our soundest sleep. here, the very concept of dawn is not really early in the morning. And yeah, and the cracking of the morning, no. That's not really earliest hour, the wee hour or the witch hour. But it is indeed about our enlightenment. Literally, once we actually kindle this enlightening flame, we should have carried this torch proudly yet cautiously, because our soul is very vulnerable to temptations coming from this earthly society, the secular secular desires. Think about it. You would like to feed yourself with the greatest or Epicurean dishes. That would be very much alluring, right? You would so anyhow anyway. Human beings or animals, we're all very inclined to pursue what would suit our animal desires, like lust or and hunger, or it would actually go endless, right? The list would go on and on and on. So once we somehow bring out the very we somehow reach the epiphany to carry this torch, then we should have never let it go down. But we by constantly being cognizant of this spirit. But even in the darkest moment of our life, deepest sleep, our soundest sleep, even we have a tight sleep, not physically also, but spiritually, even we actually somehow forget about what we need to do spiritually. Even we would slacken our grip on this enlightenment, it would never go into flames. It would never go up in smoke. Don't worry, it would actually stay with us. But the problem is we need to fuel this torch not to go extinguished. We should actually carry this. Once you kindle it, once you lit up this match, the flame should go on. How do we do it? By constantly refining and honing our spirit. Or you can actually say that constantly, slap your wrist to get yourself vigilant. We have to be awakened. That's really the gist of our life. By doing the means, you actually learn how to turn a deaf ear to the outcry of materialism. You actually turn your TV on, there is a commercial that might actually talk and whisper into your ears. Hey, you might need the Snuggie. It's right now, these days, it's so cold, right? You barely get yourself out of bed, right? If you really want to stay active, you need to get this. Like this type of, temptations. Or seduction. You have to overcome them. To have your spirit agile and true to its form. Right? I'm not lying. It was just a randomly selected one. And I uploaded the initial video. The very decision to jump into this article was also equally improvised, because I was actually solving Vocabulary.com's questions for 2 hours. So even if I had done a previous groundwork, there's no way that I would be able to retain these answers. No, I would never be able to retain them.